A shocking case is causing an uproar in Greek public opinion, as a mother was arrested on suspicion of being connected to her daughter's death. However, the events behind this case are full of mysteries and secrets. The consecutive deaths of children in this family reveal a story full of pain and undeniable suspicions. Is this merely a family tragedy, or is there something more terrifying hidden beneath the surface? The central figure in today's case is Rula Pispirigu, born in 1989 in Patras, an ancient city located in western Greece. Although her private life was kept secret, it can be confirmed that Rula grew up in a happy, complete family with the presence of her parents and siblings. Deeply connected to her hometown throughout her life, Rula chose to pursue a nursing career when she reached adulthood. However, completing her studies remained questionable. While some sources confirmed she graduated, the majority suggested she was unable to complete this educational path. Besides her interest in medicine, Rula also harbored an endless love for sports, especially soccer. She was not only a fan but also directly participated as a referee in amateur tournaments. It was during these exciting matches that fate arranged for her to meet Manos Daskalakis, a talented goalkeeper shining in the local league. Love quickly blossomed between the two, and after a sweet period of dating, on January 30th, 2013, they welcomed their first little angel, beautiful baby Georgina. When their firstborn daughter Georgina was about to turn 1, Rula and Manos realized this was the perfect time to solidify their love through marriage and build a happy family home for the little girl. October 4th, 2014, witnessed the couple's brilliant wedding, and this special event was even given an entire page in the local newspaper for detailed coverage. This was understandable, because at that time, Manos had become a familiar and beloved face as the main goalkeeper for a famous local soccer club. The wedding ceremony was not just a simple union of two hearts, but also carried special sacred meaning when they decided to simultaneously hold a baptism ceremony for little Princess Georgina, the baby who was eagerly awaiting her first birthday. This action spoke volumes about the deep love and responsibility the young couple had for their precious child. Their family happiness became even more complete on August 5th, 2015, when they welcomed the birth of their second daughter, a baby lovingly called Malena. The baby's birth marked a new milestone in their family life, making their home more complete than ever before. Despite the radiant exterior of a happy family of 4, the reality behind those closed doors harbored deep fractures. Close relatives later revealed that the relationship between Rula and Manos had begun to experience problems from the early days, but everything truly became tense in the summer of 2018. It was during this time that Manos's extramarital affair was exposed, like lightning striking a clear sky, shaking their small home. This crack created not only physical distance, but also deep emotional wounds, pushing the marriage to the brink of complete collapse. But then fate once again tested their family. March 2019 brought devastating news when Malena, the little princess who was only 3.5 years old, was diagnosed by doctors with acute leukemia. Faced with this tragedy, their love for their child became the thread that reconnected Rula and Manos. They decided to temporarily set aside their personal conflicts to face together the greatest challenge, the battle to save their beloved child's life. Malena had to endure a harsh chemotherapy regimen lasting 8 long days. Throughout those days filled with tears and worry, Rula and Manos stayed in Athens, always by their daughter's side. Meanwhile, Georgina, the eldest sister, was sent to her paternal grandmother's house. Initial medical reports brought hope when Malena showed favorable responses to the harsh chemotherapy regimen. Consecutive biochemical tests all showed positive results, signaling that the small body was gradually defeating the wicked disease. But in just a moment, on the afternoon of April 13th, just one day after beginning the healing journey, Malena quietly left this world. The forensic autopsy report noted the cause of death as liver failure combined with cardiac arrest. Malena's death was like an earthquake devastating Rula's soul. Close relatives later shared that although Rula gave boundless love to both daughters, with Malena, that connection was much more special. Perhaps because fate had miraculously arranged for both mother and child to be born on the same day, at the same hour. The overwhelming pain of loss forced Rula to seek support from psychologists to continue living. Her endless love for her child was expressed through an emotional tattoo, recording the image of the little angel along with the painful inscription, 13th of April 2019, the day a mother's heart felt torn apart. It seemed that love could heal all wounds. A few months after the tragedy, Rula and Manos still tried to celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary with sweet words on social media, as if wanting to hold on to what remained of their happiness. But reality was harsher. The pain of losing a child not only failed to heal, but also caused the distance between their hearts to grow ever wider. In September 2019, Manos announced that he wanted to end the marriage, believing they could no longer continue their journey together. Rula's heart shattered when faced with a decision she could not accept. During those dark days, Georgina's innocent voice was like a small ray of sunlight piercing through the dark clouds when the naive girl shared with her parents her desire to have a little brother. But Rula's heart was still healing from the wound of losing Malena, making her unable to think about bringing a new life into the world. Manos, with his mood oscillating between love and separation, also did not consider having another child a priority during this difficult time. Time passed, and the school psychologist's words about Georgina's increasingly intense desire seemed to touch Manos's heart. Perhaps he realized that a new sibling could bring joy to his daughter and possibly be the bridge to help the family heal. Therefore, despite their relationship remaining cold, during a fateful trip to Athens, Rula became pregnant. September 2020 welcomed the arrival of Iris. However, Iris's birth still could not fill the growing gaps in their hearts. Family life continued to drift in coldness and distance. Manos's indifference seemed to push Rula to seek warmth elsewhere. In a moment of weakness, she became involved in a brief relationship with a family friend. Meanwhile, Manos also couldn't resist temptation, returning to old paths with romantic relationships outside marriage. But when the truth about Rula's mistake was exposed, it became the final straw that made Manos make a decisive decision: end their 7-year marriage. All signs pointed to the marriage reaching its end. The broken pieces could not be reassembled into a complete whole. According to many reliable sources, Manos had decided to leave the home and began seeking legal counsel to officially end the marriage. Discussions about divorce procedures had been initiated, but right at this moment, when everything seemed decided, fate once again cruelly struck this family with an unimaginable blow. On March 21st, 2021, Iris, the tiny 6-month-old daughter, quietly passed away in her crib. The initial medical report concluded the cause of death was pulmonary edema, but detailed examinations afterward discovered abnormalities in the sinoatrial node activity. The death of their youngest child was such a shock that Manos temporarily returned to the house that had once contained all their beautiful memories. He stayed for a few days, perhaps to share the pain with Rula, but then he left again, leaving his wife alone to face the tragedy. The days from April 5th to 7th witnessed the desperate actions of a woman drowning in despair. Rula sent Georgina to a friend's house and then disappeared. According to sources, she had hidden in a hotel and threatened to end her life, a final desperate gesture to move the heart of the man she still loved. But Manos, with a heart numbed by too much suffering, remained determined to continue his journey. He returned to the lawyer's office for the second time, determined to complete all procedures to officially end his marriage to Rula. April 8th, a fateful day when Rula and Manos were preparing to officially part ways at the lawyer's office, became the day when fate once again cruelly tested this family. Just as Rula and Manos were preparing to sign the final papers to end their marriage, a new nightmare struck Georgina, their only remaining daughter. That morning began with alarming signs when the 9-year-old girl suddenly suffered violent seizures throughout her small body. The pain caused Georgina's stomach and back to ache, forcing her parents to rush her to the hospital. The experienced medical team conducted thorough examinations, but strangely, they could not find any clear signs explaining the little girl's painful condition. The situation became more complicated when Georgina suddenly vomited, forcing doctors to transfer her to the specialized pediatric department for better monitoring and care. The following days passed in extreme tension as Georgina underwent a series of complex tests, from blood tests to X-rays, from ultrasounds to specialized tests. But what puzzled the entire medical team was that all results showed normal indicators, as if the little girl's body was completely healthy. However, on April 11th, in a moment no one could have anticipated, Georgina's heart suddenly stopped beating. Alarm sounds rang throughout the hospital corridors as the emergency team rushed into the battle for life. Nearly an hour of extreme tension with continuous cardiopulmonary resuscitation measures, non-stop chest compressions, and silent prayers from everyone. Finally, like a miracle, Georgina's little heart returned to the rhythm of life. Unfortunately, the time that Georgina's brain was without oxygen caused serious consequences. After being intubated and transferred to intensive care, the little girl was diagnosed with brain damage, leading to quadriplegia and severely affected overall health. In May of the same year, Georgina was transferred to the intensive care unit of a cardiac surgery center where specialists would assess the little girl's condition. At the same time, due to the family's history of deaths from similar causes, doctors decided to perform genetic testing on her parents to rule out the possibility of hereditary heart disease. According to some sources, the test results showed no problems, and they also found no heart disease in Georgina. However, during treatment at this center, the little girl began experiencing higher fever and more seizures. After she suffered a second cardiac arrest, doctors decided to implant a pacemaker in Georgina. After this procedure, the little girl was transferred back to the pediatric ward to continue treatment. According to reports, Georgina was discharged on July 19, 2021, and returned home with her mother, hoping to improve her condition. The little girl began participating in rehabilitation and attending a creative activity center. However, her health was very poor because besides being unable to move, she also suffered from epilepsy and was fed through a tube, causing her to lose a quarter of her weight. Therefore, just 5 months after leaving the pediatric ward, on January 19, 2022, Georgina had to be hospitalized again due to new seizures. This time the situation was much more complicated because the little girl was also vomiting severely. Due to seizures occurring almost daily, on January 26th, they decided to transfer her to a children's hospital in Athens, where she stayed for the following days accompanied by Rula, who never left her side for even a second. 3 days later, on January 29th, Georgina experienced severe respiratory arrest and had to return to intensive care, where she was intubated. Unfortunately, the 9-year-old girl died that same afternoon. According to later accounts from hospital staff, Rula's reaction when receiving news of her eldest daughter's death was extremely strange. She left the intensive care area and went to the doctor's room, where they explained Georgina's condition in detail. Everyone present was impressed by Rula's unusual calmness as she received the news without shedding a single tear. What surprised the doctors and hospital staff even more was that instead of calling her husband and family to announce their daughter's passing, Rula asked them to call the forensic doctor in Patras to perform an autopsy on Georgina. She dialed the number herself and asked the doctors to speak with the forensic doctor, but the doctors refused, explaining that in such cases they would notify the police as usual. It's unclear whether Rula was able to speak with the forensic doctor, but what is certain is that a few days after Georgina's death, the Patras prosecutor's office ordered police to open a preliminary investigation into the deaths of the 3 sisters within a 3-year period to determine whether they were due to pathological causes. On March 24, 2022, toxicology test results showed the presence of ketamine in Georgina's blood at a concentration of 6.5 milligrams per liter. After confirming that doctors had not used this drug during the intubation process for the little girl, on March 30th, police arrested Rula and charged her with premeditated murder. The case immediately attracted public attention in Greece. When police came to make the arrest, they faced dozens of angry people gathered in front of the Daskalakis family home, where a group of journalists was also waiting to get a statement from Rula. At one point, the crowd forced the door and rushed into the house, where Rula, her parents, and other family members were present. The situation became uncontrollably chaotic when Dimitra, Rula's sister, appeared at the scene. Her presence seemed to add fuel to the fire, making the angry crowd more violent than ever. Shouts, curses, and demands for justice rang out like thunder, while some people even called for immediate execution of Rula for the horrific crimes they believed she had committed. Police had to intervene forcefully to restrain the crowd that was losing control, forming a protective wall around the house. Rula then had to be escorted out of the house under strict police protection. She was covered with a hooded jacket and had to wear a bulletproof vest to ensure safety before being taken to the courthouse, where she would face questions from judges and give her official testimony. Even after Rula had left the scene, the people's anger had not subsided. Protesters continued to gather in the area, expressing their outrage by vandalizing the house walls with writings demanding the harshest punishment for child killers. Meanwhile, riot police were also deployed heavily around the courthouse, where another crowd had gathered and continuously shouted insults and abuse at the woman they considered a cold-blooded killer. The level of public agitation and outrage had reached its peak, forcing the Greek government to speak out. Through an official spokesperson, the state called on people to remain calm and place their trust in the justice system, emphasizing that justice would be carried out fairly and correctly. To understand why society's reaction was so intense, we need to recognize that in Greek culture, the image of the mother is revered as a sacred symbol. Mothers are considered those who must sacrifice everything for their children, protecting and nurturing them with unconditional love. Therefore, crimes of killing children, especially by the mother herself, are considered unforgivable sins by Greek society and are condemned most severely. The media did not hesitate to make haunting comparisons, calling Rula the modern Medea, or Medea of Patras, referring to the classical Greek tragedy about a woman who cruelly murdered her own children to revenge her unfaithful husband. This name became like a haunting curse, forever linked to the image of a mother-turned-monster by betrayed love and the desire for revenge. However, before the investigating judge, Rula firmly defended her innocence with steely declarations. She asserted that Georgina's death, her most beloved daughter, was entirely the result of a serious medical error. With an emotional voice, she accused the very doctors who had once cared for her daughter of being the real culprits, claiming they had accidentally injected a lethal dose of ketamine during emergency resuscitation measures on the fateful afternoon of January 29, 2022. But despite these emotionally charged defenses, the prosecution had built a completely different picture, a dark story of maternal love distorted by ambition and desperation. According to the charges, Rula had first attacked her daughter's life in April 2021 when she secretly injected a central nervous system depressant, most likely ketamine, into tiny Georgina's body. This drug, with its particularly dangerous properties, could cause sudden cardiac arrest, severely reduce muscle contractions, and bring blood oxygen saturation to dangerous levels. According to the prosecutor's view, this first plot had failed thanks to the timely intervention of the medical team, who had saved Georgina from death's grasp. But Rula, in her desperation and pathological determination, had not abandoned her cruel plan. The second opportunity came in January 2022, when she was alone with Georgina in the quiet hospital room, a perfect moment to carry out the final act, and this time she succeeded. Immediately after Rula's arrest, on Monday, April 4th, 2022, the two previous deaths of her daughters began to be reconsidered. The files concerning the death of Iris, the 6-month-old little angel who had passed away in March 2021, and Malena, the 3.5-year-old girl who had died in 2019, were both transferred to the Athens prosecutor's office for reinvestigation. That same day, the court ordered Rula to be held in pretrial detention under strict special protection. This decision was not only to ensure she could not escape, but more importantly, to protect her from violent reactions from other female prisoners, mothers who might not be able to control their rage when facing a woman accused of killing her own children. June marked an important turning point when the prosecutor's office decided to establish an expert committee consisting of 2 renowned pathologists to review all conclusions from previous autopsy examinations. These experts, with their long-standing experience and reputation in the field, were tasked with finding the truth hidden in deaths once considered natural. A month later, in July 2022, the results of the in-depth investigation exploded like a bomb in public opinion. Forensic experts had determined that both little angels had experienced their final moments in agony from suffocation. With Malena, the 3.5-year-old girl had been strangled by her mother's own hands, while Iris, the tiny 6-month-old baby, had been smothered with a piece of cloth. Particularly terrifying was the discovery of this cloth right in the baby's crib, with bloodstains containing Iris's DNA still on it. These horrifying discoveries completely changed the nature of the case. What had once been considered heartbreaking family tragedies now became evidence of a serial crime carried out systematically and coldly. The prosecutor's office did not hesitate to bring the most serious criminal charges: serial murder. August 2022 witnessed an important decision by the court's Judicial Council when Rula was officially brought to trial not only for Georgina's death, but also for the deaths of her 2 other daughters. By October, when the investigation was thoroughly completed, Rula faced a complete and serious list of charges: premeditated murder and attempted murder of her firstborn daughter, Georgina Daskalakis, 9 years old. The historic trial began on January 30th, 2023. The trial lasted 14 tense months, with 89 court sessions and the appearance of about 60 witnesses. The prosecution built their case on the solid foundation of undeniable forensic findings and emotional testimony from the medical team, doctors and nurses who had directly witnessed Georgina's final days. Additionally, testimony from those close to this family's life also contributed to painting a comprehensive picture of a haunting family tragedy. In the early days of the historic trial, the first and most painful witness to speak was Manos Daskalakis, the father who had lost all 3 daughters under mysterious circumstances. As the plaintiff in the case, Manos had to face the most difficult task of his life, testifying against the woman he had once loved, the mother of the children he had lost. Manos's testimony carried a painful contradiction. He admitted that Rula had once been an excellent mother, devoted and full of love for her children. Memories of his ex-wife caring for their daughters thoughtfully remained vivid in his memory. But at the same time, with heartbreaking honesty, Manos also admitted that his decision to demand divorce might have become the spark that ignited Rula's desperate actions. He speculated that she might have turned their daughters and their illnesses into tools to keep him from leaving. Finally, Rula Pispirigu was sentenced to life imprisonment after being found guilty of the deaths of her 3 children. This case became one of the most shocking tragedies in Greece. The story of a mother who became a modern Medea out of fear of being abandoned by her husband. And that concludes today's case. Thank you for following along, and see you in upcoming videos.